Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Gaming Under the Influence. My name is Alex. This is Mike. Today we'll be discussing games as a service and why we don't like it. But before we dive into that, Mike, I'm thirsty, buddy. What have you got for us today?
Today we're drinking live transmission milkshake IPA from Flying Monkeys in Barrie, Ontario. Pretty solid, pretty creamy, strawberry and tea tasting IPA. They actually brew it with some tea in there, some orange peels.
Really?
Yeah, heavy dose of hops, the names of which I can't recall right now, but there's some decent ones in there. All around, I mean, it evokes the taste of a milkshake, certainly. I don't know if you tried any other milkshake IPAs before. There's
I don't think so.
some by other Ontario breweries. They're all really, really good beers, but I think of all of them that, if you were to compare them to their namesake, like the taste of a milkshake is definitely present here, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Creamy, like, remember going to Licks, that burger joint when you were a kid and getting the strawberry milkshakes? That's what I remember.
Classic
when I drink
strawberry
this beer.
milkshake.
Yeah, it's very good stuff. It's an IPA, though. It definitely has that resiny, malty, like, underbelly, heavy, like, overtone, like the spices on top of the food, the salt and pepper on top of your food. That's the hops right there. You taste like tropical, like, fruity, juicy tastes. Definitely, though, it's strawberry as well. It's great.
Yeah, there's a lot to digest here.
It's a delicious IPA. I strongly recommend anybody try it. And I read a couple of reviews online classifying it as a New England IPA. This
Really?
like hazy, like heavily dry hopped versus like I don't know what the opposite of dry hopped is. When they hop inside the boil, adding the hops to the undertone of the beer as opposed to like on the top. And this beer is supposedly a New England style IPA, based on what I read online just before this video. Means the hops are added at the end. Very like hazy, delicious, like fruity style, tropical taste.
Right on.
That you derive from that style of hopping, I suppose, and it's a great beer. Yeah, I know we both enjoyed it over the course of the previous summer, and here we are drinking it again.
That's right, we do.
Yeah,
we
glad
did.
to share it with you guys today. Flying Monkeys is great.
I'm glad one of us.
Come by to drink it.
I'm glad one of us knows our stuff in this in terms of beer.
I think we both do, even intuitively. Everybody
I just
knows.
like the taste.
Yeah,
I was gonna say though, one of these days you're eventually gonna have to pick something that I hopefully don't like. Otherwise, I'm gonna sound like a billboard ad for all these damn beers, right?
Oh, they're all pretty good. I mean, it's okay to like everything, right?
I mean, I guess the
of them are
good thing
good.
about it is that there's a lot of choice out there.
Yeah.
If you're tired of either the same old beers or just your run-of-the-mill Canadian Coors Light type of thing.
Certainly, yeah.
Right?
Even if you
There's
like that
a lot of
style
options.
of beer, if you prefer lagers, it's a very viable style of beer. Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with liking lagers, but there are ones made with local ingredients, higher production standards, no corn syrup involved, because apparently that's the thing that people are talking about lately. And I recommend you try those. Give it a shot. If you like that style of beer, I promise you people around here can make them better than the ones you've tried from far away. Beer should be made locally and enjoyed locally, I think.
Right.
It definitely
Not,
tastes better when it's fresh, not shipped across an ocean.
Yeah, not pumped out like.
Yeah.
Cool.
Enjoy
man.
the taste, the terroir, or whatever that word might be, properly pronounced as of your local hop farms, your local,
Right on.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's dive right into this, dude. So, recently in the news, I mean, it's always in the news since it came out, Anthem, a lot of players have been not exactly thrilled with some of the changes they made and some of the updates. So, what the latest spark that I've seen was players are staging a protest. I mean, this stuff happens all the time on Reddit and Twitter and stuff, but the reason I feel it's relevant for us right now is because we want to take a good deep dive into games as a service and what it is, why we don't like it, why this sort of thing comes out of that, right? So, basically, the players are protesting a new update which limits the loot drops, right? So they're getting more and more stingy as they're updating this game with the loot drops.
Yeah.
Is what I'm hearing. I don't have any experience, but again, this is all the speculation that I've been hearing. People's,
To revisit the timeline relevant to this issue, wasn't it the case that in the pre-launch, like in the week where early access was available to those people who paid, or during early access subscribers or whatever, and even in the beta, loot drop rates were perceived as accelerated. Like people thought there was a great amount of loot coming in. There were screenshots posted probably on Reddit there of how many masterwork items people had farmed. Yeah, you probably have a copy there. How many items people had farmed, based on the early, like pre-patch, like farming rates and afterwards, and people were disappointed that the loot levels were stifled because even at that time, I don't know if this issue has been fixed. I believe it has. There was drops for characters that were irrelevant to their build. They were not usable, right? Just
Right. Which, I mean, that would be the case in any of these games. You'll encounter stuff that you can't use. You sort of trash it and move along, right? But
yeah, but I mean, that's adaptive, right? Like, you could
Yeah.
have systems that measure the...
Oh, okay. I see
Yeah.
what you're saying.
From what I understand, that was another frustration, and loot rates were accelerated and decelerated at various periods up till now since launch, and I guess this is a turn in a direction that people are not fond of. You know?
Yeah, I can't imagine why they would be. But do you think there's at all the possibility that maybe they sort of made the drop rates or increased the drop rates in that pre-release and maybe early on in the release of the game to sort of entice people to play and be like, oh, we're getting so much good stuff, like this is cool, and then maybe now their plan is to try and phase or slowly lower the drop rates now that people are in to try and get them to spend money. Like, is that, do you think that
I
could
think
be
it's
possible at all?
definitely
Like,
possible. It's
right, it's
within
definitely
the
possible,
realm of
but
possibility, but I don't know for sure.
would
if
you
they
put
are
it
doing
past
such a
EA?
thing. I definitely wouldn't put it past them, but at the same time, it just, at this point, tell me something about the numbers. Is the player base inflating, deflating? What's going on with that?
You know what?
Do you
I'd
know
have
anything
to
about
look it
that?
up. The only thing I saw today was that they want to stage a protest, and I'm very skeptical of things like this because you and I both know that we knew what kind of game this would be right out of the gate. So we decided we're not going to play it. We're not even going to stock it. We're not going to sell it here.
We
We
didn't
don't.
stock it. We didn't
Yeah,
sell it
we're
here,
not.
sorry,
It's not even so.
It's based primarily, though, on our objection to this notion of games as a service,
As a
which
service,
we are here
exactly.
to explain to you once again. We touched on it in our first video, but
Yeah, we did briefly touch upon it, but I wanted
There's
to kind
more to be
of
said.
get to the basics of this and sort of
Yeah.
really pick at it a little bit. Like, what is games as a service exactly? Like, what would you call it?
what would I call it?
Yeah. Well, how would you categorize it? Like, where do we begin with this?
We have a bunch of citations in our first video we could refer people to
Yeah.
to consolidate our presentation of what we think this is. But games as a service essentially consist in a developer producing what's called an MVP, a minimum viable product. A product that is, no frills, stripped to its very bones, that they could monetize with additions of content that was either cut out or that they intend to produce after the initial development cycle. The more bare bones, the better, because that means there's more content to monetize after the fact to sell to players who jump on the initial bare bones product. And, we can understand that since perhaps a lot in Destiny, it's been Division 2 is coming out this week, there's more of an acceptance for games of this nature.
Even like Rainbow Six Siege, I've heard even if when that came out, I don't think it had like a critical acclaim, but it wasn't poorly reviewed. It was sort of mixed, and now if you talk to anyone who's played that game, they love it. All the content updates have been great.
Yeah, Siege has been worked on for sure.
Right. So that's
What I
that's
understand,
somewhat
but-
of like a success story. I feel that. I mean, you don't hear that from any of the EA games. Like, did Battlefront 2 recover? Never. I don't think so.
I don't believe it did. Ubisoft is good at supporting its products.
Right.
Even if the Division and Rainbow Six Siege have taught us anything, but at the end of the day, I think my objections to games as a service are based on more fundamental considerations, such as, the notion that a game that's built in its base form to be a minimum viable product, like, the concern is not at producing something good and beautiful, like the idea that somebody is seeking to imprint on the matter required by the medium, the gameplay systems, the graphics and the story and all of the art involved. Like, from the very beginning, doesn't it seem to you like perhaps people who are familiar with the genre more than I can interject and give us some insight? But doesn't it seem to you that in its basis form, you could say that these kind of games are designed primarily as a system of making money and not as something
Absolutely.
that's meant to be beautiful in itself? Like, we can consider other games as akin to novels. Like, they have beginnings and ends and story arcs and protagonists, and they have an inner life, a beauty to them. Like, they could stand on their own. They could be perhaps not monetized in the short term or currently, but over time they could be sold infinitely because they're good, they're beautiful.
Exactly.
Even if their graphics age, like Ocarina of
They
Time
could
is still a good
stand the
game.
test of time. Yeah. I feel
Nintendo
like,
still sells it.
it bugs me. I feel like that's kind of like where the line is drawn between EA and other publishers. Where now I don't know for sure, obviously, but I almost feel like with certain games, even like The Division is coming out soon, and we're actually kind of excited to play that title.
I
And
am.
That
Yeah, you're
follows
right.
similar games as a service,
It does.
thing that we don't like, but it just seems like EA is always the one who's like they build their game with that core, like, this is a games as a service and we're looking to monetize it and actively, like, just, you know, get as much as we can out of it in terms of monetization, whether it's pay to win or just stupid cosmetic stuff. I feel like other devs don't really push it as much, even if they follow the trend. Like the Division 2, like I said,
so what do you think, like, in a perfect world, what would a I'm asking myself, you know, I've been very critical of live service gaming, of the battle royale genre, of anything really that requires, like, connectivity to justify its existence, you know? And, like, at the end of the day, I find myself asking, like, is there a good version of these kinds of games? Like, this is an honest question, not like a cynical, like, rhetorical, like...
I think you're just against multiplayer games.
I definitely don't enjoy multiplayer games,
Which is
but
fine.
It's rooted in this, like, contention that if something is there to provide you with a means of enjoying yourself, like, or a means of two people, like, interacting with each other, then that's all well and good. Not to say it doesn't fulfill that purpose, but what it's not is something with, you know, the same kind of inner life, the same kind of self-justifying existence that a novel or something with characterization and internal properties has. It doesn't even necessarily have to have a narrative arc, but it could have nothing of the sort. Like, I don't mean to even, you know, overtly restrict the category that I'm speaking of, but I definitely prefer things that stand on their own, that are good in themselves, that don't require...
I don't blame you. I mean, there's not a lot, like... I think it's okay that, obviously, you know, a ton of people play multiplayer games and all that stuff. It just seems like multiplayer was the birthplace of all of this crap, right? Because like
certainly
said,
it was.
right?
But, like, again, at the end of the day, like, nothing against multiplayer games as multiplayer games. But what they aren't is the same kind of game. Like, the term game is perhaps too loose to categorize all of the things we understand as games nowadays. You know, you have on the one hand things that are actually tool sets. They're closer to board games. They're actual games. You know, they're means of engaging with other people. And on the other hand, you have games that are more like texts. They're more like novels. Again, they have an internal life and internal logic, progress and arcs and aspects, you know, unto themselves. Like, they're self-contained artifacts, you know, and, like, in that sense, perhaps our category is too broad and we need to make a bit of a distinction here. And I think that distinction is where my interest either peaks or wanes, you know, on the side of things that have, again, an inner consistency, an inner life that consists in more than just mastering a skill set to beat somebody else. Which to me leaves that game in the realm of instrumentality. You know, does that make any sense?
I mean, a lot of stuff you say doesn't make sense to me, but you're just...
I think that games of that
on
nature,
another
like,
level of...
games of that nature, they exist for the purpose of facilitating, again, your interaction with somebody else. You know, and that's well and good. That could be awesome. But at the end of the day, then, are they the same kind of thing as those games which... To list the 15 adjectives I just posed moments
ago. If I could,
you know,
summarize you right now... in the smallest, like the shortest statement possible, it would be like level 99 speech in Skyrim.
I don't know, maybe.
Not in a bad way.
No, I get that. Sorry, I don't mean to be verbose, but that just seems to be the difference between those kinds of things.
It's a very touchy topic for you. But
is the game you're making an instrument, or is it something good in itself?
Well, that's the thing, right? A lot of these are instruments.
That's all I mean to say.
To just get people in and to spend money, right?
Now, the instrument could be like, it leads us to consider other things, like games like chess, you know? Like, I think many modern games...
There's no microtransactions in chess.
Or analogous to chess. Like, they're contests of skill, yes, but even that, like, what is the difference between something like chess? That's a good example. Like, I think the best a competitive game can aspire to is to be something like that, like an ultimate contest of skill. It means of measuring the differences between two people.
Yeah,
that's all well and good. But what it's not is something like a novel, something with, again, an internal life, a beauty unto itself, something existing in the world independent of our interaction with it, which has something to offer you, but not because somebody else is there with you enjoying it, because it is literally in itself.
Yeah, like you enjoy the actual thing itself, the game itself.
Life,
like, you know? Devil May Cry 5, I'm enjoying it right now.
Born in the mind of an artist.
Whereas Anthem, the whole thing is get your buddies together, let's go, right? And let's get loot.
Again, there's nothing wrong with that. And again... to return to this question I posed earlier, what would a perfect, service game look like? Would it be a world where, two people can do the kind of thing you can do in a single-player game? Like, is that possible?
Like a
I don't know.
Experience,
I haven't seen it yet. Perhaps it is, but I feel maybe it's slightly unjust to categorize the genre according to the definition I just posed to you right now. Perhaps it's more just to characterize merely the games we've seen made in this genre that way. Maybe there is a way to make them
mean,
that does not succumb to all of these considerations. But again, I ask myself, like, what would a good one look like? What would you do?
Well, like a good games
if it's
as a service game, you're saying?
Because if it's a service, again, if its life is not measured by its
like,
own internal consistency, but by how it will appeal to you over the long term, isn't that just intrinsically like a fault in its design?
Right.
It's meant to be an infinite motion machine.
Yeah, that's what they are. But like, so okay, for example,
a platform, right? Like, it's not a thing in itself. Then it's a platform. It's a
But like, what
like
I want to
Steam,
ask you, because you've played World of Warcraft, right?
I did.
So
yeah.
if we like try and trace this back all the way, I'm thinking World of Warcraft's got to be one of the earliest entries. And something you can categorize as a games as a service. It had a subscription base back then.
Then even EverQuest
what games
was
had
before
that?
right?
And then,
EverQuest
okay,
was
you're
the
right. Yeah,
predecessor of it,
EverQuest
sure.
and what was the other one? What about RuneScape?
RuneScape, sure. I think it was a browser.
But was
game
that
originally,
was
wasn't
yeah
it?
okay?
But it was a thing.
never
It wasn't not that it wasn't a thing.
But you enjoyed World of Warcraft, right? You played World of Warcraft.
But I enjoyed Destiny.
You paid
as
a
well.
subscription.
Not to say that I don't mean to say I don't even enjoy these kind of games.
Right.
There's lots of enjoyment to be derived from them, but I think that's slightly separate than the question we're discussing, isn't it? Like whether or not they are in themselves like works of.
Feel stupid now.
Perhaps I'm fucking getting off topic. But
It's okay.
the point I'm trying to make is that they're not
17 minutes
they're
in,
not,
so you
they're
can
not,
swear.
They're not alive. They don't have the life of an organism. They're not works of art, in other words. They're instruments. They're tools, but they're not good in themselves. you
Right.
know? I mean, it's sad, man. The whole Anthem thing is depressing. We grew up playing BioWare games. I know both you and I alike. Like when I was it seems like right now, it was a very long time ago. But the first time I played Mass Effect, the first time I bought Baldur's Gate on PC and saw the BioWare logo and ripped that game as like a 12
you
or
loved it,
13-year-old.
right?
And
Absolutely.
I was like, it was so far above my head, but I dicked around in it for hundreds of hours.
Yeah.
Rockin'. What happened to that company, buddy? Where did they go? How did
Well,
they get to making this? Well, I know what happened to them.
I
They
mean-
left. They quit, right?
Yeah, I
That's
actually
what happened. It's-
I heard that one of the ex BioWare, I don't remember if it was the director or somebody like a creative somebody.
Yeah.
We should pull it up, but they're starting their own studio,
Oh, true.
which
Very
maybe
nice.
some of that soul, some of that
Yeah, it might be good.
sort of might be in a new company that'll hopefully be able to pump out like
It would be nice.
good games that sort of are of the same vein of
Yeah, man. Yeah.
the games of Mass Effect that everybody likes and
I paid
BioWare's
attention to the
previous
writers.
efforts in the industry.
Do you know there was a guy called Drew Karpyshyn? I don't know how to pronounce his name. He wrote these Darth Bane Star Wars novels. Also the writer of the Dragon Age series. Like, they're BioWare's writers. The guys who came up with those stories that we remember their games for now are gone.
Yeah, but I mean,
they're
a
gone.
game like
Yeah.
Anthem, what do you need good writers
They're
for?
gone.
You're
I don't know.
You're kind of throwing all that to the wind, right?
It's
And
sad.
just
Like when I think of BioWare, though, that's
But
what
that's
I
what you
recall,
thought
and-
of, yeah.
And now it's
we're a far
I
cry
don't know what
from
else
that
to say.
now,
It's-
buddy.
it's-
Yeah.
it's some unfortunate business, boys.
Yeah.
This is the end of an era. Like BioWare was.
I
rest in
remember-
peace, BioWare. I'm sorry,
yeah,
boys. I'm
it's-
sorry that you had to meet this end.
It's crazy the days of
Yeah.
a
I understand that
developer-
there's a fan base though for Anthem. Is that the case? Like,
You know what? To be
all
honest,
these guys
I
on the internet are saying that like Yongye and fucking Skill Ups and shit are keep referencing this.
I don't even
dedicated
know.
Anthem fan base. Where are they?
I haven't paid too
Who
much
are they?
attention, to be honest, because I've separated myself as much as I can from Anthem. But there's always that, like I explained before, that echo chamber of people on Reddit complaining about the game. You get that in every game, no matter what, whether it's actually a good game or in Anthem's case maybe not such a good game. You always get that sort of really hardcore fan base that's active on Reddit that's like attacking it. So this could be just that. The active like hardcore fan base who play like 10 hours a day. I don't know what these guys do for a living. I want to be able to play that
I'm sure
many
there's
video
something
games a day,
fun
but-
there for those people to enjoy. Like, no, not even to say that the game is not fun. I'm sure it's very fun.
But I feel like those are the people who complain the most. They're the ones who are like, I play this game for 10 hours a day, and then they complain about it. But like, you're getting something out of it. I wouldn't even touch it.
Probably fun. But the problem is don't lie in its practical measure. Like whether or not it's fun or not fun. Like I guess the
Yeah.
objection is that it was designed for some other purpose than to be beautiful. You know.
I think we should. I think we should change the name of the show to like, just like, off topic, where we just sort of
Tangent.
tangent. We just sort of like start with an idea, and then we end up on the moon, right?
Yeah. And you know I had
like it though.
mentioned
I kinda
something
dig
like
it.
this to you earlier, but Anthem is a funny game because it's technically apparently very competent. You know, its systems are intact. It's fun to play.
Right? if you were just watching gameplay video, you'd be like,
yeah, this
game looks
solid
sick.
offering, but
It looks
where
amazing.
it's
Don't buy Anthem.
Where it's deficient is not in its matter, not in its systems, not in the way it feels. It's in its form. It's in the idea those systems are subject to. It's like a painting using really good quality paints, and that's all. That's all it is.
That's
the guy painted a terrible picture.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's unfortunate. Whereas you could consider another genre, like I'm always happy to talk about JRPGs. You know, an antiquated genre, no doubt, but and
there's still life for
enough,
it.
From what I understand, though, it originated out of necessity. Like it was impossible at the time to make a combat system in real time that was enjoyable.
That was.
So they
you got to think
turn-based Final Fantasy combat, right?
Yeah, I mean, Final Fantasy was. Even at that point, Final Fantasy in 1987, I think it wasn't even one of the first JRPGs. Like they had Phantasy Star stuff that was on the Sega. This stuff's before I was born, right? I actually
just bought that on DS, I think.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah, the Fantasy, or on Switch they had something.
Those
with
are those
Phantasy Star
old
inside the
JRPGs
collection,
where you like had to draw the grid.
Yeah, there was some serious.
Figure out where you were going so you could turn back and find your way back. That's like some ancient gaming stuff that
But I think these games are
we
interesting.
kind of just missed
when you set them up next to something like Anthem, because they're games that I wouldn't say they're technically incompetent. Their technical aspirations are just much lower. Their material aspirations are just much lower. They're not trying to be as complicated a color of paint, you know?
Yeah, you know what?
They're not out there trying to make the most complicated gunplay or combo system.
Yeah.
Trying to have the best graphics. But that makes a lot more room for ideas to flourish. You know, systems and mechanics are what they are. They take a back seat to excellent ideas. And in spite of the rudimentary nature of those systems,
Right.
there were brilliant fucking things made from them, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think comparing it to something like Anthem is fruitful because we can see that what's more important in designing a game is not, you know, the complexity of the world or the flying mechanics or the gunplay. You can have baseline
Yeah,
mechanics.
it's all like fluff, right? That all looks good and plays, feels good, but
you can make
at the end of
games
the
that
day,
could be board games. Such is the rudimentary nature of their mechanics, and they could still be brilliant because the soul, you know, living behind those mechanics is more acute, more like coherent, more self-sufficient. You know, it's not there merely to amuse or to, though it can amuse. There's nothing wrong with amusement. It's good to enjoy things, of course. But again, is it just merely there? Is it like the 2.5 Men of video games? There as something for you to rest your eyes on, you know, something almost like a masturbatory aid. Like, that's not all we should want from things.
I like that.
That's not all we should want from things. They should be beautiful, and games like that can be.
I feel you. I definitely get that.
In spite of the rudimentary nature of their systems.
Yeah, without being able to put it in as nice words as you do, I definitely feel that sort of like attachment towards something that seems so beautifully made, that, you know, a game that's
it's almost
really,
like back in the day when civilizations would build things like art, like cathedrals, the Colosseum, great works of cultural achievement, you know,
right?
Like many people collaborating to a single beautiful end.
Yeah,
that's the
There's
game.
no reason for it to look that way, but it does because
it's beautiful. That's why. That's the only reason. It's good in itself.
Games exist to be beautiful. If we had more time, we could do
just like
separate shows.
It's no small coincidence that nowadays people don't build things like that anymore. They build big,
it's not
boxy
it's not
pieces
feasible.
Of shit. There's just no reason. They're like,
no.
Who cares?
Yeah, who gives a shit? As long as people can get in there, right?
Can, like, you know, just digest it.
Right on. Before we get way too carried away with getting off the topic, as much as we tried to stay on topic, but
it's not possible here.
It's not in our playbook. Doesn't matter. Regardless, if you're still with us, just announced, finally confirmed, is Halo Master Chief Collection coming for the PC. I don't know when. Doesn't matter. Look it up and you'll find it. Which means I'm gonna sell my Xbox One or give it away if we get enough subscribers. But enough of that. I think we're gonna close this one out, and maybe in our next video we'll touch on the JRPGs that we sort of kind of dabbled in at the end of this.
Great, Alex.
Think that would be good? Awesome. Thanks for tuning in. Give us a like.
You finished your drink before me this time.
That's a rare. We should.
Just so into the conversation.
I liked it, man. I mean,
thank you very much.
You were talking more than me, so maybe that's why. That's why. Give it a whirl. Good. Come on. Good. If you liked it, give us a like. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like. We'll take it all. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you on the next one.
Good night.